Hi there, I'm Stuart. I'm going to answer a couple of the questions you've set out for us today. The first one is, how did you know when you had bonded with Dean? Did I ever feel rejected by him? I'd probably say it took about 6 months, and there wasn't a particular defining moment that I felt, all kind of clicked into place. It was more of a general feeling, and I think, to be honest, a lot of that was probably me and being able to kind of overcome those difficulties and challenges during that sort of first initial period. Do I ever feel rejected by him? Yeah. If I ever say no to something that he wants, he's generally quite argumentative. But I think that's just kids for you. But as an adult, you have to just take it on the chin and kind of move on. Okay, so the next question. As the secondary carer, how did you overcome the rejection you were shown by Dean? Initially, I didn't do particularly well at it, and I was probably more of a child than Dean was at that point. But I kind of realised that you get out what you put into it. So I started spending a lot more time with Dean. I'd always spent time with Dean, just him and I, as well as family time, but actually kind of accelerating that and making sure that we had our own hobbies and stuff that we go off and do together. For Dean and I, that was cycling and things like Lego and stuff like that if the weather wasn't particularly great. That to me worked really well, and that helped accelerate our relationship much faster, which is really cool. Okay, so next question, have you ever been tempted to adopt more children? So the answer to that is a flat no. And how did you settle on an age group? Okay, so initially we decided to adopt a younger child, maybe sort of 2-3 years old. However, when we went to one of the prep courses, there was some videos being shown of kids, Dean being one of them, and we instantly fell for him at that point. So yeah, basically we then started effectively chasing the child, and that's how we ended up with Dean in our lives. Yeah. So what's been your best and worst experience of adoption? I suppose going through the initial process, the screening, the kind of getting to know the child, that kind of stuff, that's really stressful. It's really draining, far more so than I ever thought. I wouldn't change it for the world, because it's just one of those things that has to happen. It just takes yourself time to adjust to the scenario, as well as bonding with the whole family, your child, being welcomed into the family and things like that. So it's a really tough time for everyone, but you pretty much just got to persevere with it. And what's the best moment of adoption? I don't really think of adoption as like a standalone thing. My family's my family, and I don't define it by the fact that Dean is adopted. He's my son. So we've had loads of really amazing moments. I can't actually think of one off the top of my head, which is really sad. I've got a really bad memory. But we have a lot of fun together. We do a lot of really cool stuff together. Dean and I, we have really amazing moments, and then we have moments where we're just completely at loggerheads with each other. And it's frustrating at times, but I wouldn't change him for the world. What advice would you give to a secondary carer? So my advice is to give as much support to your partner as possible. It's a really tough time, and to be honest, for most people, going to work is probably far easier than trying to welcome a new child or children into your lives, and dealing with all the stuff that comes with that, because it's tough. Okay, so next set of questions. When did you realise you, Richard and Dean, were a family? And when did the nerves, anxiousness start to ease? I'd probably say about 6 months for me. It took me longer to get there, because I think probably at the start my expectations were too high, and I needed to actually just chill out a little bit and take stock of what actually was in my life. Not what I thought it should be, and how quick we're moving towards that. Okay, the next question here is, how has adoption impacted on relationships with your family, mums, dads, sisters, etc.? It hasn't had a huge impact on my side of the family. Probably more so with Richard's, because there are, there was younger children there. Richard's parents are very involved in Dean's life, which is fantastic. So probably we've kind of swayed more towards Richard's family, which I think happens sometimes. So yeah. Okay, so the last set of questions. How did you approach balancing work with bonding with Dean? Okay, so what I did was I made sure that I earmarked specific time out for Dean and I. And I mentioned a moment ago that initially I hadn't earmarked enough time out, so I obviously increased that over, as kind of the weeks and months went on, and I started seeing a really good impact, really good kind of bonds between Dean and I. So the more time you spend with him, the better that bond is. So you just end up kind of like feeding the beast, so to speak. So yeah, will you ever have enough time in your life? No, you won't have enough time, but you have to make it, and you have to eliminate stuff that's it's not important. And then the final question: how would you do it differently if you had your time again? Wow, I'd probably do most things differently, but that's parenting for you. You're never going to get it all right, and sometimes you have to just go with it, do your best, and hope for the best. So that's the end of my questions there. Hopefully you found this useful. I'm sure Rich can fill you in on anything that I've missed. I hope you have a great day, and best of luck with the rest of your journeys. Thanks. Bye.